Real estate rock stars. This is Aaron Amuchastegui. Hey, I am back and I'm super excited about today's episode. So today, this is a treat. I get to interview Bennett Richardson. He is the Chief Marketing Officer and Communications over at the National Association of Realtors. I actually first got to chat with them a little bit via email. They just did this really cool influencer event out in Chicago where they let in various different influencers come out and get to meet with the top brass at the National Association of Realtors. I was supposed to make it. I had to cancel last second due to an illness, and so I missed out. So I begged him to come on the show to give me some updates, and he is here today. Bennett, how's it going?
Aaron, thanks so much for having me on. Glad you're feeling better and excited to chat with you and your listeners.
Yeah, we get to have our virtual chat instead, and then hopefully I still get to meet up with you in person. I know you guys have a bunch of events going on this year. I know there's going to be some more chance for that. But so how did the event go a couple weeks ago?
It was great. No, and again, we're bummed you couldn't make it, but no, it was really good and was the first of many of these kinds of events, but really was something that we've been working on since I started. So I've been with NAR about 9 months, so joined last summer. And one of the things that we really wanted to do as we brought on, both myself and started to really bring on a new communications team and think about how we approach NAR's communications to meet this new moment that we're in of really transforming the association was one, just to really open the doors and make sure that everyone that's having important conversations in real estate, everyone who has, like you, have tons of real estate professionals and realtors as your listeners and viewers and audiences, that you have an opportunity to have a conversation, have a dialogue with NAR. And that's just something that the association just hadn't done before. I think that even going back to the lawsuit and settlement and practice changes a couple of years ago, the association is now in a moment where we're no longer trying to, answer with a no comment or try to really overly, control our message. It's more about transparency and accountability. And so we're trying to show up everywhere we can, have as many conversations like this as possible, but also make sure that the dialogue is going in both directions. So that was really the goal of this gathering that we hosted a couple of weeks ago. For us, we have lots of conversations with reporters. I think we did something like 400 plus media interviews last year, which is a huge step up for us. But folks like yourselves, there's so many podcasts, so many social media voices, so many newsletters that are reaching so many realtors and so many real estate professionals. We haven't had a chance to just have as much of a dialogue with that group. And so we got together a dozen or so folks like yourself, leading voices in the industry, everyone from newsletter authors to podcasters to social media influencers, just to start sharing more with them about what's NAR up to in 2026. What are some of our big goals? As many folks I'm sure have heard, we launched our new strategic plan for 2026 through 2028. So we had a chance to have myself and Nakia Wright, our CEO, and a number of other influencers and leaders on the NAR side get a chance to talk with some of the top voices in the industry. So it was a great, lively conversation and first of many.
Yeah. No, the slides that you guys sent out that covered what you talked about has been great as I've been looking through that. Before we start to get into some of that nitty-gritty stuff, what brought you over to the National Association of Realtors 9 months ago? Why
Yeah,
did this become your new thing?
Yeah, great question. So I've been in, media and communications and marketing for about 20 years, a few different chapters in that career. Started out on the agency side, working at public affairs firms, really focused on digital and social media and things like that here in Washington. Worked with a number of different trade associations as clients, but was never in-house at a trade association. Did some different things over the course of the past several years. Kind of the most interesting or maybe most random thing on my resume is I helped start Hinge, the dating app. I was the co-founder and kind of early stage CMO of Hinge in its earliest years, helped launch that. And then moved into media. Really loved working with reporters and working with media companies as we were launching Hinge in the early years of my career. So I spent almost a decade at Politico, helping them launch a number of different businesses and a number of different kind of arms of the publication. Spent some time at Google leading policy marketing. Most recently, before NAR, helped launch a new media startup called Semaphore, really cool global economy publication. But really was excited about the opportunity when NAR reached out to me about joining the association for a couple of reasons. One, realtors are near and dear to my heart. I married into a family of realtors. My wife's aunt, Heidi Maynard, and her daughter, Corey Tracy, run Pack Maynard Real Estate in Kennebunkport, Maine. Amazing small team and brokerage there, leading kind of the southern Maine real estate space. And lots of my closest friends are realtors. And so I've always felt the power and the value of what great realtor representation can do for somebody in their lives, and helping, certainly helping me with kind of achieving my own slice of the American dream with, my realtor Daniel Hyder here in Washington, helping us first get our first little condo, and then help us find a house once we started having kids. So the opportunity to tell that story, I just got really excited about. And I think that, realtors work so hard, are so dedicated. There's so much professionalism and expertise in the industry. The chance to help tell that story, both out to the public, but then also to get realtors and NAR's members kind of excited about what the association is up to again, was really exciting. And a big part of that was our CEO, Nakia Wright, joined NAR a little over 2 years ago now. And she's a fellow media veteran. She came to NAR from the Chicago Sun-Times, where she was their CEO. She brought in a huge number of new executives into our executive team and across the company. We've actually turned over about a third of our staff is new now at NAR. And in addition to that, we have shrunk the team by about 14%, but it's been a real transformative moment here, and just a great group of people. So really excited to show up every day and help tell the story of just the amazing work that realtors do, but also help NAR really enter this new chapter and make sure that we're being as transparent and open and vocal, and having these kinds of conversations, and frankly answering some tough questions that NAR might have shied away from in the past.
Yeah. Well, so you talked about kind of this turning point for NAR, right? And like the kind of this idea, or this concept that like something new is changing. And you hit on a little bit this idea of what happened a couple years ago, right? Like the NAR lawsuits, and which was, I've talked about it a bunch on the podcast and with agents everywhere. And I just hosted my big event in Austin, and we kind of asked the agents, like, so what happened, right? And it kind of from the operation side, it kind of turned out to be a nothing burger. Like nothing really ended up coming of it, other than National Association of Realtors and these really, really big brokerages having to pay these like giant fines. So it was this incredibly like frustrating thing that at the end of the day didn't really change much, but it really put into light that like realtors, you talked about everything amazing that realtors do, right? And we know that, right? But realtors always seem to kind of be under attack. The commission is always under attack. Like what they do, people are always saying, kind of complaining and talking about that. But a couple years ago, the big brokerages and NAR had to deal with it. It feels like now that is like part of like we're everyone's behind, that's behind it, us and everything. But how do you, how do you feel about it at this point? Like is that part over? Is that part of the shift of like, hey, there was a couple years that it was like playing on defense, and now we get to be back on offense? Or was it not that big of a deal from the NAR side?
No, it was a huge deal, and I think it's really important for a couple of reasons. I think one, it was really a wake up call for the association to really rededicate itself to showing up for its members every day. Nakia, our CEO, has a great phrase that I really take to heart, which is that we at NAR need to match our members' hustle. And that's been a huge cultural reset at the association, to make sure that we are working really hard with world class talent to show up and really build what we think our members want NAR to be in the future. So I think that it was really valuable and an important moment for the association in a couple of ways. One, hitting that reset button, really making sure that NAR is becoming the association of the future for our members, and not the association of the past. And then two, I think really recommitting to professionalism. It's something that we've talked a lot about as we've been rolling out our strategic plan. But I think making sure that NAR is lifting the levels of professionalism in the industry, finding new ways to educate members, to engage members, so that they've got access to the kinds of education and tools and innovation that they'll need to really help grow their business. And so I think that as you look at our strategic plan, that we started rolling this out, and that's one of the reasons that we, gathered some of your peers a few weeks ago, is to talk to them about the strategic plan. But that's our goal for the next 3 years, is to really do two core things. One, modernize the association. We want every single realtor to feel extremely good about how every penny of their dues dollars are being spent, certainly at the national level where we operate. But then two, building the future member experience, like any, sort of area of bureaucracy or administration. We never want it to be frustrating to deal with NAR, to try to get your code of ethics training, to try to understand your education opportunities, to access new tools. We have a huge opportunity to do those two things at once, make sure that we're modernizing the association across every corner of the work that we're doing. But as we're doing that, building that future member experience. And that really covers so much of what we're doing right now. We've got 8 different commitments. We've got, dozens of projects and work that goes behind the scenes of how we do that. But it's really about making sure that two things happen. One, this association is lean and mean and operating at the highest level, so our members feel really good about what they're supporting with their dues dollars. But then two, also making sure that when you need something from NAR, from the smallest thing to the most important piece of your business, and putting all of those things together, that we're showing up for you in the right way. So that's, I think, for all of those reasons, it's been a huge new chapter for us, and I think there's a real difference in how NAR is showing up for its members, and our hope is that, especially from my world on the marketing and communication side, as we continue to improve the kind of content that we're putting out there, the kind of dialogue that we have with people like yourselves, the ways that we communicate, getting better at simple things like email and making sure we're not sending you too many emails from NAR that are ending up in the in the junk folder, to make sure that we're just showing up for our members and being as helpful as possible.
Yeah. So the strategic plan. So you talked about that a little bit, right? It's like mostly showing people like, hey, this is where NAR helps you. This is the value that you get. But what do you feel like the most important part of that strategic plan is? Like when people are saying like, hey, what are you doing this year or what's new this year? I mean, you just hit on a lot of it, right? Like the content and the tools and making sure people like know what's out there. But what excites you the most about that?
Great question. I think for me, it's really about getting back to business and really getting back to how does NAR help our members thrive in their day-to-day business. Something that Kevin Brown, our president of our board, talks about all the time is that this is a moment for NAR to get back to business. And what we mean by that is getting back to serving the business and the growth of our members. And so we have been listening to our members nonstop since I started. We've surveyed hundreds of thousands of members. We host focus groups almost once a month with different groups of membership. We hosted one at the beginning of this year as we kicked off the strategic plan. And what we heard from them was crucially important in just reminding us that at the end of the day, we're talking to an audience of hardworking realtors that just want to build a thriving business. And so anything that we do, there's a lot of good and important work that we're doing to modernize the association. But at the end of the day, what a member wants to know is, how is that going to help me? How is that going to help me, navigate a complicated, changing real estate market? How is this going to help me navigate and grow my career? How is the work that you're doing going to put more money in my pocket and help my clients have stronger spending power? And so that's been a really important, just North Star for us as we've kicked this off, is to remind ourselves there's a lot of things that we're doing to improve the association's work, but we really need to ground all of that in, okay, how is that actually going to help our members get to their next transaction? How is that going to help our members and our clients come away from those transactions as happy and positive and prosperous as possible? And so as we think about different corners of the strategic plan, that really infuses itself in a lot of different ways. One core example that I'll just touch on quickly is advocacy. NAR has one of the most powerful lobbying and advocacy operations in the country across any industry. Um, that advocacy operation is what allowed our members to continue operating during COVID as as essential workers. It's through the tax bill last year why all sorts of things from the state and local tax deduction getting expanded so that clients have more money back in their pockets to be able to invest in their next home, to be able to protect the independent contractor status that's so important to both agents and brokerages to be able to operate successfully. So anything from advocacy to every other corner of the work that we're doing, I think just continuing to ground ourselves in this needs to be a bottom line, business benefit conversation for our members. And so that's really the most important thing to me, is that, and that's frankly the drum that I beat here at the association every day, is every piece of improvement that we're making, every time we're looking at, governance and trying to improve that, or looking at, my world with our consumer ad campaign or our member communications. The question I continue to ask is just, how do we make sure that we're grounding this and keeping our members at the center of everything we're doing, putting the member first, and really saying, how is this going to help our members grow their business? Because at the end of the day, that's what realtors want to do. It's an amazing entrepreneurial group of people. As our former president, Kevin Sears, likes to say, realtors wake up every day unemployed. They have to, earn that next chapter of their business through that next transaction. And so we want to serve those members and making sure that they're doing really well and their clients are doing really well. So everything we're doing really comes back to that.
Lobbying is such a good point that agents don't think about necessarily on a daily basis. They definitely don't think about it, right? Like, they become aware of new laws. They go, okay, this law is actually going to help us. Yeah, the first time home buyer tax credits, when those things are happening, like some of the COVID stuff. There are so many laws that when they happen, realtors love announcing them, or they love finding about it. They're educating themselves, but realizing that you guys are behind a lot of that change. That the National Association of Realtors using those laws don't just change, and laws that make the real estate process easier aren't things that just happen, right? Somebody has to go make them happen. And I think that is probably one of the strongest values of NAR that people don't necessarily think about on a daily basis, don't know about it. Again, like when a law comes up that is going to be helpful and protect the industry, going to protect them as 1099, not required to have insurance or pay, there's a lot of different, again, being a realtor seems like it's always under attack. There's always somebody out there that's trying to say, like, yeah, you get paid too much, or you should do this, or you should be considered an employee, and all these different things. And knowing that those laws that do protect all the agents out there, you guys are on the forefront of making that happen. You had some so part of your handout was kind of like the survey thing, some of the things that were really important to people. They wanted to be able, it was like, rebuilding partnership foundations, cultivating trust in the realtor brand, advocating for property ownership for all, like reminding people that, like, you don't need to rent a house for life. Like, you have a right, like that's a thing that helps everyone on a national basis. If people get to the point where, oh, I should just rent instead, especially when rates are higher and pricing is, question. There's lots of different markets where it's like, oh, it's cheaper to rent than buy, but being able to tell kind of those stories on a national level, so people think about it and question maybe what's out there. I like that. And really, like, a lot of people's main concern is it's to protect their legal interest, right? Which you already hit on, and then helping them thrive in their day-to-day business. Again, agents just want to run their own business. They want to be able to continue to do business the way that they've done it. They want to have some autonomy. They want to have some help, but they also want to be able to call the helpline when they have like a legal question. I remember when my brother first became an agent, we had been running a brokerage for a long time. And when things had come up, we would just kind of deal with it, or we would talk to people. And he was one of the first people I knew. He's like, I called the realtor legal line, and they helped me. He was like, he's calling. There's a lot of resources that are out there that I think not everybody understands. Like, this is out there, to protect you. So you have, one of the evolving values that you guys said in the sheet. There were 4 things on here at the beginning. Trustworthy, or earning trust through transparency and consistency. You've mentioned transparency a few times, of just like, hey, we're a team. Data informed, ground decisions and share the data. And then adaptive, staying agile and nimble in the dynamic market. And then accountable, deliver on what you say you're going to. Data informed is like, that one stands out. There's 2 things that stand out to me there. We have a very interesting real estate market right now. There are some markets in the country that are performing well, and it is a seller's market, and people are transacting all the time. And then in places like Austin, Texas, it is definitely a buyer's market. We have a higher inventory than we've ever had. So the country as a whole, that's part of why it's so, such a dynamic market. And that data that people can use to make their decisions, it's really easy to get emotional in real estate. Right? You're buying a house. It's your biggest decision ever, your biggest purchase ever. You're going to live there. It's where your kids are going to grow up, all the things. It is a very emotional thing. And then agents, it's their livelihood. So it's easy to make decisions based on emotion instead. Oh, I hope it's going to get better, or I hope it's going to work out, or I think this is going to work out. But I think in times like this, being able to stick with the data, when you're talking about data, what does that mean? What does the NAR do for people when it comes to like data and resources, and how can they get the most out of that?
Absolutely. I think it means two things. I mean, on one side, it's about us doing a better job of just reaching and connecting with our members. And so, to your point on the legal hotline, to me, that's an opportunity to just better communicate with our members, right? So the way that I'm using data, the way that my team is using data, is by getting better at giving our members the information that they need. So that's just a basic up leveling of how do we use the data that we have about our members, what they're interested in, what they've liked or clicked on or subscribed to, right? Just over the years, are you a broker? Are you an individual agent? Are you part of a big team? Are you part of a large brokerage? Are you independent? So at a baseline, just in terms of how we serve our members, we are doing that in a more data informed way than ever before. So I think the good news there is that over time, we hope that those emails you get from NAR, they're going to be more useful, more targeted, more personalized. You're going to get understandings of everything from that latest advocacy win to that new legal resource in a better and clearer way. So that's just, I think, table stakes, frankly, for us just to continue to modernize the association. In terms of how we help our membership with their business, that's also a huge opportunity. Because everyone knows NAR has, leading research capabilities in the entire housing space. I mean, our research team and Dr. Lawrence Yoon, our chief economist, Dr. Jessica Lautz, our deputy chief economist, are just amazing leaders, and they're publishing huge amounts of data that we really want to help our members use more effectively. So we're trying to do a number of different things with that. One, that team actually just launched a metro market statistics dashboard that's available for free to all of our members. If you go on to nar.realtor and you click the research tab, you'll see it all there. But the goal there is really to continue to give our members more tools and more access to every bit of data that we have about existing and pending home sales, about what are the trends and the demographics and the purchasing power that exists in different markets. So really making sure that any research data that we have, we're giving back to our members so that they can take a look at everything that they need. So that's just really been about how do we take the data that our research team is compiling to make those big reports and make those big analyses, and make sure that members can play around with that data and then get access to the information that they need. So, things like you were talking about, like you could go on to that dashboard now and say, all right, give me a look at, what are the home buying trends in Austin, either in terms of, average price or income, or how demographics shifted, all sorts of interesting things in there. So that's been a big piece. And frankly, just getting that data out to our members in more easily digestible ways, right? Turning those into little infographics that we're posting on social that members feel like they can grab and reference in their next meeting, making sure that it's that client-facing talking points, that you're not just feeling like you have to go, onto our website and spend hours tinkering around with something, because that we're giving you access to information that's readily available at your fingertips. So I think just taking all that data that we're compiling on our research side and just making sure that members have access to it is a huge, important piece of that. Another one is RPR, is the Realtors Property Resource tool, which is an amazing tool for our members to be able to generate the kinds of reports and intel and comps and analyses that our clients and our members' clients are going to want and need. RPR is used by more than 500,000 agents already, by realtor members. It's based on MLS data. About 99% of the MLSs around the country pipe their data into RPR. You're able to create great reports and customized white label reports for your clients in RPR. That team is adding new tools on top of that data constantly. So everything from an AI script writer, right? If you want to generate this report, but then also want to know how to talk about it in the really high level talking point way, you can now use that within RPR, and you'll get all the talking points. It'll even generate a little video for you if you've got a client who you think is rather look at a quick video rather than getting a handout the next time you see them. So some really great tools in there. But I think across all of it, we have all of this data, all of this research that we have access to. How do we help, going back to what we were talking about before, right? How do we help that benefit our members' businesses. Because at the end of the day, what that's going to help with is it's going to make that next client conversation more informed, more interesting, with a more textured understanding of what's going on in your market and where are those, pricing trends going, and where should that next offer be, and all of those data points. I think that you have a consumer now that is using AI themselves, right? And is really curious about, home sale trends and all sorts of different facets of the transaction. We want to equip our members to have as much data and as powerful tools as they can to really, match that moment, meet that moment for their clients. So yeah, tons of exciting data and research stuff happening across the association that we're just trying to make sure that all of our members know they have access to, so they can use it whenever they need it.
Yeah. So everybody listening, while Bennett was talking, I loaded up the NAR Realtor page, and even if you're just searching nar.org, data, right? It's going to pull to that research page, and as we're scrolling through there is tons of data in there. There's tons of reports. It talks about different hot spots, being able to see the housing starts, being able to like digest that data. And then also what he brought up is so RPR, Realtor Properties Group, it's NARRPR.com. Everybody has access to that through their Realtor Association. I think most people don't think about it. 2 weeks ago at our event, we had all these people presenting on AI and how to use AI to create your listing presentations, how to use AI to create your marketing presentations, how to do the videos. And what I'm seeing on here is like you guys already have that tool, and you have a lot of those tools. A lot of the things that I had speakers talking about how to do with these new AI things, you guys are doing that. And I think the idea, so if you're an agent that's listening right now and you haven't like plugged into it yet and just taken a few minutes to see what they are offering, this is a perfect example of things that agents forget that's out there, especially if you're making these big changes, right? Especially if you're like ramping it up, because this is the stuff that agents are using all sorts of other tools out there to do, right? And they're having to retrain these other tools to work in real estate to do it. I mean, they're going into ChatGPT to create a listing presentation and all sorts of different things. And just seeing that you guys are preparing that already, as I'm clicking through here, there's some really, really impressive stuff. And so I think if nothing else, but we get the word out on that today to agents, like the stuff that I'm seeing on both the Realtor Research and Statistics page and the Realtors Property Resource pages, like that is going to help you with your business right now. I was training a gal on giving her first listing presentation like a week ago, right? And it was like pulling out like, hey, you need this. You not only need to do the comps, but you need to show them who you are, and then you need to show them in the market. You need to show them the market trends, because when you're going to tell them what their price is, you can show them, hey, like, yes, I know you bought it for this back in this year, but this is where we are in comparison. Like the data really helps when you're trying to talk the consumer into writing an offer or accepting a listing. And so having that at your fingertips. And so, so much of the stuff that I went over with her, and she went and got the listing when she did it. You guys have a lot of that data on here. So I think that is a really important reminder. I mean, I got to be honest, the last time I logged into RPR was like 10 years ago, right? Like I know it's there. I know it's a resource. It's been a resource, but then these other things happen. But it's that reminder of saying like, no, like RPR has been improving along the way too. It's doing everything that all those other sites are doing. So like, come back and see what you already have access to. So I think that is just fascinating as you're doing it. So so looking through like your signature projects, you've got a few kind of um, you know, and I guess we talked about a lot of them. You've got the dynamic reporting, the legal leadership forum, like and again, like that's what you guys are kind of doing on the front end with the different laws. Promote committee excellence by reviewing all government's committees, budget transformation, and you talked about that at the very beginning too, kind of making sure that people know what the money is spent on, what their dues are going to, and then just overall elevating that realtor brand. So people are proud to say they're a realtor if they have realtor behind their name. It's when I first got into real estate now, God, it was 2009. So 17 years ago is when we first started our own little brokerage. And my grandma was like the broker of record. And she was very old at the time when she first started, but it was very important to her that realtor, like the realtor designation meant everything. right? She said, no, you can't just say you're a realtor. And she's like, and these names that say realty, like that doesn't count. They're not realtors. Like it was really, really important to her that that name went behind her name whenever it was, that we told people what that meant, because she said it stands for something different, and she's talking about experience from 30 or 40 years ago. And then that was 20 years ago. And I started, working with her on it. And so I think that idea of elevating that realtor brand to where people know, like, no, it means something. It means something different. As people are doing that. I mean, most now when it comes to most like MLSs and like local MLS groups, most of the time, any MLS that's out there is a part of the realtor brand now. Isn't it? Is it still? Are there still a lot of agents out there that can be operating that aren't part of the National Association of Realtors? Do you know what the percentages or what the categories are with that? Because it used to be you didn't necessarily have to be, but it made more sense to be as you were joining different MLSs. I guess you understand the question. Is it are
Yeah, no,
most
absolutely.
agents
Yeah.
realtors?
Yeah. So the short answer is yes. So generally speaking, there are about 2.7 million licensed real estate, agents and professionals across the country. We release our membership numbers twice a year. The last release we have is the end of last year, which was about 1.49 million members of NAR. So more than half, but around half of those total ecosystem are NAR members and our realtors. When you look at who is a licensee versus who is a realtor, it really is a difference of professionalism, right? When you see a lot of folks who may still be licensed but are in adjacent fields among those licensees, you also see folks who maybe are just starting out looking at real estate as getting into that as a career. But when you look at that NAR membership, it really is the professional level of the real estate industry. And for us, and going back to, I'd love to hear your grandmother's experience with being a realtor. We want to really solidify that realtor designation, that NAR membership, as representing the gold standard in the industry for professionalism. And that is one of the biggest pieces of my work. It's the corner of the strategic plan that I own as an executive, kind of reporting up to our CEO and to our board, and cultivating trust in the realtor brand. But specifically, how do we really make sure that we are creating that gold standard understanding of what it means to be a realtor? So it's crucially important. And I think at the end of the day, the way that we help our clients, thrive in their business through that is making sure that at that moment, especially among first-time home buyers, when they're beginning to get serious about looking into purchasing a home, um, are they seeking out that realtor designation next to the name of that potential agent they're going to work with, because they know it means that they're working with the professional gold standard in the industry. So that's really our goal there. The biggest tool that we have to do that is our consumer ad campaign. So going back to 1997, when the membership first voted to have a public awareness campaign around that value of being a realtor, we have had different stories and different campaigns out to home buyers and consumers about why to work with a realtor and what that realtor R designation means. I took over obviously just 9 months ago, so we launched a new campaign just a few weeks ago called More Than Opening Doors, and really excited about this campaign. Frankly, the best feedback and reception that I could ask for is I've been getting completely unprompted emails from brokers and agents that I've never met saying, I love the new campaign. Most importantly, saying, I finally feel like all the hard work we do is on display for our clients and our potential clients. And so that was really the goal with this new campaign. So it's called More Than Opening Doors, trying to reclaim that stereotype that all a real estate agent does is open a door, to a showing or to an open house, and actually show all the work that goes behind the scenes. We did a bunch of research going into the campaign among consumers and first-time home buyers. And one of the pieces that was a real sort of light bulb moment that led to the direction of the campaign that we took was that moment of preference for, in our case, working with a realtor, versus just working with a licensee, was when consumers got to see behind the scenes, right? Because realtors work so hard. They're working their network with other realtors, with lenders, with appraisers, with inspectors, with this entire ecosystem, leveraging the power of their brokerage and their teams and their colleagues. But so much of that happens behind the scenes, right? That happens before the showing, afterwards, during the negotiation, as you're writing an offer, oftentimes after closing as well, when you're helping your client settle into a new neighborhood and get to know things and get connected with different kinds of things you might need. But we wanted to put that behind the scenes effort and hard work and expertise and preparation that really makes up what we think is that professional gold standard, right? Like, that professionalism often happens more behind the scenes than it does just having a great showing or a great open house or a great experience getting that offer finally accepted. So that was really the focus of the campaign. So we were really excited to show the public and to show first-time home buyers, which is really the target audience of the campaign, just all the hard work that realtors do behind the scenes. And so I'm happy to give you the link to the campaign so we can kind of drop it in the show notes for everyone. But the goal of the ads is to really show, through that structure of your traditional showing, we then have realtors go into sort of super realtor mode and open one door in the home and it becomes an architect's office where they're grabbing plans. Open another door, they're transported to a lender's office where they're helping to connect their client with somebody who can help them, and all sorts of those behind the scenes moments. So the feedback, we just launched it about 3 weeks ago, but the feedback has been tremendous so far, and really has created that unlock moment where consumers start to realize just how hard realtors work on their behalf, and showing that hard work, showing that preparation, showing that expertise, showing how ethical realtors are. That's what's been creating the real aha moment for consumers. So we're really excited about the direction that we're taking that. But again, it all goes back to cultivating trust in the realtor brand is great, but it really only matters if it's helping helping our members thrive in their business. And so that's really the goal there. And what we measure is two things. One, is this campaign sending leads back to our members, right? That we direct to a landing page where we've got a realtor.com powered, find a realtor search experience whenever any home buyers are seeing the ads. But then also, are they actively seeking out that membership designation when they're looking for representation? And so that's really what we measure, is that consumer awareness and consumer preference for working with a realtor. So excited to see how the campaign continues to play out as we start getting reporting back from these early weeks. But so far, the feedback's been really positive. And at the end of the day, we just want to help realtors thrive in their business. And this is a really powerful way for us to do that.
Yeah. No, I would love to get that link for the show notes. That is so much of the content that agents are making on social media today. They're trying to show, hey, we spend time doing X, Y, Z. We showed this many houses this many times. Like, yes, there's always the story of this guy called, I showed him a house, I bought it, and it was a slam dunk. But more often it's a story of I showed this person houses for 9 months. Even when I first moved out to Texas, I came in, we flew out and met with this agent like 4 different times. He showed houses for me on each trip we did. Each day it was like all day, and came down to where we didn't buy. Now, 9 months later, when we came back, we did. Now, that time it was a slam dunk. Walked into an open house, wanted the house, had him write the offer, and we bought it. But he had worked forever and didn't get paid until, really a year later when it happened. And so people could have looked at that in two different versions, like, oh, Aaron walked into an open house, hired the agent. That was so easy for him. But the reality is the agent spent so much time the year prior, trying to help me. So that's the content that people are trying to make. I think you guys doing that as a whole behind the realtor brand is great. I would love to add that link into the show notes. This has been awesome. We really only have a time to talk about like a couple more things. There's so much we could talk about. Maybe we'll have to get you back on here for a follow up. I'm curious, at the event a couple weeks ago, what were the most common questions? Like the people because you guys were there, for a few hours, they got to chat, you guys did your presentations. So the people that came in, what was the most common question they had for you guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think there were a few different things. I think one goes back to what we were talking about before, and was almost an extension of the kind of feedback that we heard in focus groups, which was, it's great that you all brought in a bunch of new leadership. It's great that you're operating, more professionally, more cost efficient, all these things. But at the end of the day, how is that going to help members, right? And so I think that's where we really dug into a lot of the topics that we've been talking about, whether it's RPR, whether it's access to more data, whether it's how NAR's lobbying and advocacy efforts actually result in spending power for clients, and lower taxes for realtors, right? One of the most eye-popping stats for me from our advocacy presentation from Shannon McGann, our chief advocacy officer. Um, our advocacy team has worked to defeat 11 tax proposals over the course of the past decade. If all 11 of those had passed, that would have been $2.3 trillion in more taxes on the industry over the past decade. That's a lot of money, trillion with a T. And so
Wow.
I think that was a big topic, was just saying, help us understand, like, how does NAR work go back into the bottom line of our members? So we dug into that a lot. One thing we talked about too was governance. I think, really, really helping folks understand this is not just changes happening among association staff, but how are we also making NAR, as a board and as a volunteer leadership and with committees and all of these kind of operating mechanisms of the association, how is that also becoming leaner and meaner? And so we're, improving the committee application and selection process. So we're making sure that the folks that are representing, you and your audience on those committees are even more qualified than ever before. We're looking at, how do we sort of streamline that process too? How do we make sure that if there are two committees doing similar work, maybe that could be one committee in the future, just so that things are moving faster through the association. And a ton of education. We've started publishing explainer videos so folks understand, almost in that Schoolhouse Rock kind of way, right? Of how does a bill become a law? There's the same, question of NAR of like, hey, when you guys roll out a change to a particular policy, or you all decide to advocate for a particular public policy, with the government, like, how does that actually happen? And so we've tried to start to dig into that to really show folks, hey, if something needs to change for overall, NAR policies, this is how it gets discussed in the committee. This is how those committee recommendations make it up to the executive committee. This is how the executive committee either votes to try and approve and enact those recommended changes, or it goes to the board for a larger vote. So really trying to dig into that member education, just so that folks know, one, how everything happens, right? Nothing in the code of ethics, nothing in MLS policy, like none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. It all happens through member volunteer work and through really thoughtful, deliberative processes. And so it's really about just shining a light on all those different corners of what we're up to. So that's where really a lot of our conversations went. And no, it was great conversation to have. And I'll say now what I said then, which is like, our door's open, right? We want to make sure that anyone who's having conversations about the future of real estate, anyone who's trying to figure something out about how to build their business, how to grow in a new direction, that they know that there is a resource of some kind, whether it's an education, certification, or designation, whether it is just new data tools, whether it's research that we're publishing, or even advocacy, where we're advocating for a certain policy that might make anything like zoning or permitting, so that construction can happen faster, so that more new inventory can get on the market, right? Sort of every little thing that might be a worry or a wonder or an ambition of our membership. There's nine times out of 10, if not 99 times out of 100, there's somebody at NAR working really hard to make that happen. So it's really just about us getting out there and making sure our members know what we're up to, making sure they know all the things they have access to.
Yeah. That is great stuff. There's several different charts and like performance and stats that you guys also did as kind of your handout. I'm just going to cover a couple of these really quickly at the end. And because the people are always asking about where's the market at? What are the predictions? Where do we think we're going to go? Because depending on who you talk to, half the agents that came to my event a year ago a couple weeks ago have had the best year of their lives in real estate. And the other half have had a really, really challenging time. Now, most of the time, the agents that have been agents more than 5 or 6 years, they've had a really, really rough time because it's more challenging because everything, they have to work a little bit harder than they used to. Now, agents that are fairly new in just the last couple of years, they're having the best careers ever because this is like the only normal that they've seen. But people are always looking at kind of predictions. And so, kind of what your nationwide forecast just, it showed that, hey, in 2025, existing home sales kind of stayed stagnant. But for 2026, you guys are predicting, National Association of Realtors is predicting a 14% increase in existing home sales. In 2025, new home sales went down 2%. In 2026, the prediction is it's going to go up about 5%. Median home price nationally went up 3% in 2025. I think in 2026 it's going to go up 4%. Now, if you look at the last 20 years, like that's normal. That's great. We've had some crazy years that went way up. We've had some crazy years that went down. We had, 2005, 2006, 2007, where it goes up like crazy. We had the 2021, 2022, where it went up like crazy. Then we had some corrections, but now it's overall looking really, really stable. And then the mortgage rate is probably like one of the most significant things. In 2025, it was 6.7. You guys are kind of predicting by the end of the year, it's just gonna be hovering around that like 6%. Do you guys think that I guess, do agents ask about that data a lot? Was that one of the other topics that came up? Did anybody like kind of disagree with that data, or is it pretty? It seemed to me when I look at it, it seems very reasonable. It doesn't seem aggressive. There's times when people want to give the news that they like. Instead, I think this is just like a really accurate, conservative forecast. But any comments on just, I guess, that forecasting overall?
Yeah, no, for sure. And so, I'll shout out to Lawrence Yun and Jessica Lautz again, our chief economist and deputy chief economist. Dr. Yun joined us for the event, a few weeks ago, and dug into this. And the thing that was really interesting, and forecasts and predictions are. So challenging, right? Because there's always additional factors that happen throughout the course of the year. Obviously, like this year with all the geopolitical changes and news that have been happening that can affect things. But Lawrence broke it down this way, which was really helpful for me, which was, looking at, as you mentioned, those forecast for those potential interest rates. The most important thing to think about there is really access to home buying purchasing power, right? And so the way that he broke it down, and I'm sure I'm not going to do this full justice, but I'll try, was basically saying, hey, if you are right on the cusp of can I afford to purchase a home or can I not afford to purchase a home, that difference between 7% and 6% is a huge difference, right? It means that somebody with a particular net income goes from being able to afford to purchase a home to not being able to afford to purchase a home, and so really being able to get over that hump of saying, hey, if this interest rate goes down, I can actually write an offer. I can afford that home that I want, right? And that was really what was key. If you look at that, median income of the home buyer, you look at that median, average sale price, that that math starts to make a lot more sense for, as Dr. Yoon forecasted for this year, about 14% more homes, because folks can just hit that affordability sweet spot where they're actually able to afford the home that they want to buy. And so I think that breaking that down was really important, because on its face, a number like 14% could seem really ambitious and really big. Lawrence shared two things with us. One, it's really just based on things like that, of where are those trends going in terms of inventory, where are those trends going in terms of mortgage rates, and how does that affect purchasing power. But the other thing that I was sort of struck by as well is he reminded us, even with a 14% increase, we're still not anywhere near back to pre-COVID levels in terms of that activity. You actually need another double-digit increase year in 2027 to start to get back to those pre-COVID levels. So it was really interesting, even for me, right, as a relatively new executive here at NAR, to hear Dr. Yoon break those things down. And I think it's really important for folks to know that these are not finger in the wind predictions. These are really deeply data modeled forecasts that our team is making. We actually started a new little social series called Ask the Economist for exactly this reason, because we get so many questions of like, hey, how does this work, and why is this trending this way? Or even recently, folks were asking us about oil prices and how does that affect the industry. And so we try to pump out videos with our top economists as frequently as we can to start answering some of those questions. So yeah, digging into that research and that data is always really fascinating.
Yeah, man, I would probably love to have them on the podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll
The
make it happen.
Yeah, the data stuff is something I've always been fascinated with. That's how I've been able to make big plays in my business at different times, when we saw the data and kind of made some big bets early. But the oversimplification there is that supply demand, it makes a lot of sense. The lower the interest rates are, the more people can afford to buy a home. It's very simple, right? And so the more people that can buy a home, that translates to more sales, right? This just period. So however many millions it is ahead of time, there are this many people that are qualified to buy. When the rate drops to 6, then there's more people that are qualified to buy, and people love buying homes. and especially the starter homes, like that is still been the American dream, that people cannot wait until they buy their first home. And so just simply the affordability is less about the houses being it's twofold, but just rates itself means whatever, if nothing changes on sales prices, by just lowering the rate, more people can now buy a home at that entry level price point. So it makes a lot of sense. Well, Bennett, this has been a fascinating podcast for me. It's been great to get to like catch up with you, hear about what the National Association of Realtors is doing. I'm really excited about some different ways that I can partner with you guys and your team to get more of this information out there as we talk to some of your economists. Or I know there's a lot of future events that you have. Any like final thoughts for just like big announcements that you want people to know about with like either upcoming conferences or upcoming launches? Like what should people be most on the lookout for over the next month or two?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, first, I would say we're really taking our social media channels into high gear and trying to add tons of shareable, actionable content for members. And so nar.realtor, spelled out, right? NARDOT Realtor is where you can find us on Instagram and Facebook and places like that. So I'd say definitely drop us a follow, if only because some of those, economist videos, some of those charts and reports that we're sharing out there are just really great talking points to have in your back pocket for that next meeting with your next client. But then two big save the dates for us. So our two big events of the year, we host a mid-year. It's called the Realtor Legislative Meetings. RLM is here in Washington D.C. In June. We've just opened registration for that actually last week. We already had 4,000 realtors sign up to join us in Washington. So that's free to attend. It is a great conference and is also a great opportunity for getting active on the advocacy and public policy side of things. We host hundreds of meetings on Capitol Hill with the White House, with all sorts of different agencies. And so it's just a tremendous moment. So for those realtors who want to understand, like we talked about today, what's that connection between public policy being made in Washington and how that affects your bottom line? RLM in June is a great way to dig into that. So that's coming up, and then we haven't launched the registration for this yet, but just to save the date for your crew, in November 6th through 8th is NAR Next, which is our biggest kind of celebration of the industry. We're not quite there yet. I know you're in Austin, but hoping to make that almost like a South by Southwest of real estate one day. We'll be in New Orleans in November. We're going to bring on an amazing kind of new slate of speakers and experiences and innovation and social and networking opportunities. So we're really kicking that event into high gear. So really hope to see a lot of folks in Washington in June for RLM, and then in New Orleans in November for NAR Next.
Awesome. Well, I just plugged in two save the dates for both of those events. I just went and found you guys on Instagram. So nar.realtor, spelled out NARDOT. Realtor, just gave you guys a follow. I cannot wait to catch up
Appreciate it.
on the rest of the data and the stuff that you guys are sharing on there for news for me and news for my listeners. The Bennett, thanks so much for coming on the call today.
Of course, Aaron. Thanks again for having me, and look forward to doing it again soon.
What's the best way people can follow along? Is it just the Instagram page?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook. And then honestly, if you're a member, head to nar.realtor to our website, click on that sign in my account link in the top corner, and make sure you're getting the stuff you want. If you're interested in advocacy, we want to make sure you get our advocacy updates. If you're interested in technology, education, all sorts of different things. So I think that's we want to give you the information that you care about. And so making sure that you're getting the right stuff is the best way to do that too.
Great. Listeners, as always, best way to talk to me is over on Instagram. I'm easy to find because my name is unique. So it's at Aaron Amuchastegui on Instagram. If you get through the first few letters of my last name, it's automatically going to find me for you. But again, Bennett, thanks for coming on. And Real Estate Rockstars, as always, thanks for listening.
Thanks.